National Electrical Code, or NEC, defines readily accessible in Article 100. It means capable of being reached quickly for operation, renewal, or inspections without requiring those accessing to climb over obstacles or use ladders to reach a piece of electrical equipment. The code definition does not explicitly address the scenario of ducking under an obstruction to access electrical equipment, such as a panel board. However, there is an interpretation provided by the National Electrical Code Committee, or NEC, that offers insight. The interpretation from the NEC states that the term readily accessible means capable of being reached quickly for operation, renewal, or inspection, without removing obstacles or requiring the use of tools or keys. This interpretation suggests that as long as one can reach the equipment without removing obstacles or using tools or keys, it may be considered readily accessible. When applying this interpretation to a situation where someone must duck under ductwork to access a panel board, several factors must be considered. Firstly, the ability to reach the equipment quickly is paramount. If the act of ducking under the ductwork does not significantly impede the speed at which the equipment can be reached, this condition is met. Secondly, no obstacle should need to be removed. If the ductwork is a permanent fixture and does not need to be moved or altered to access the panel board, this condition is also met. Thirdly, no tools or keys should be required. If accessing the panel board after ducking under the ductwork does not require the use of any tools or keys, this condition is fulfilled as well. Given these considerations, the determining factor comes down to whether ducking under the ductwork significantly hinders quick access. If the space is tight, requiring significant contortion, or if the ductwork is low enough to pose a safety hazard, such as a risk of head injury, then the accessibility may be deemed not readily accessible. However, if the ductwork is positioned such that ducking under it is a simple and quick action, then the location could be considered readily accessible. There is no official interpretation from the NEC that explicitly addresses ducking under an obstacle. However, the guidance provided in NEC Interpretation 100-2012 supports the conclusion that if one can duck under an obstruction without removing it, without the use of tools or keys, and can still reach the equipment quickly, then the location may be considered readily accessible. It is important to note that the authority having jurisdiction, or OJ, has the final say in interpreting and enforcing the NEC. Therefore, it is recommended to consult with the AHJ in the specific location to get their opinion on the accessibility of the panel board in question. If the AHJ determines that ducking under the ductwork significantly impedes access or poses a safety hazard, they may require the ductwork to be relocated or other measures to be taken to ensure readily accessible access to the panel board. Ultimately, the determination of whether ducking under ductwork to access a panel board meets the definition of readily accessible depends on the specific circumstances and the interpretation of the AHJ. There are other situations which would similarly fall into a grey area of code interpretation. For example, if there were other equipment in front of the panel board that had to be moved. If you had to roll an air compressor a foot or two out of the way, that would not be considered readily accessible, even though it would be simple to do. If you had to disconnect and move the air compressor, that would not be readily accessible. One must also consider the worst-case scenario of a fire or arcing fault at the panel board. The individual responding to the emergency may have to act fast, and the action of ducking may slow them down or impede them from carrying a fire extinguisher into the space with the panel board. So, although the person can duck under the ductwork to access the panel board without removing any obstacles or using tools or keys, one could conclude that this location may not be readily accessible according to the NEC in an emergency. Therefore, it would be prudent to follow up with the AHJ for clarification and determination in their eyes.